Hello everyone and welcome to Fam Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host Frank Langella, joined by my co-host Marcelio Langella. And this is our Week 2 preview for Section 1AA football. Had a really great week 1. We are proud to be back with our show and want to welcome all our fans and appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you guys are new, we cover Section 1 football, we cover the games, we talk about the players, we talk about the programs. So make sure you guys follow us on all our social media accounts, which you can see on the screen. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you guys can access all our content on our website at famsportsny.com, where, again, you can get our content. If you want to donate to the show, which all the money goes back into production. So we would appreciate any donations, merchandise, whatever. But Mars, let's dive into what we're going to be talking about today, which is some of the top matchups of the week. I'll go over the slated games. We'll talk about the game of the week, and then we'll pick the games at the end. And obviously our goal is to get over 75% of our picks correct. Had a pretty good week 1, both of us, and let's try to continue it. But let's go to the AA games, and the games on deck. We'll just go through them, and then we'll talk about some of the top matchups. Yonkers Force at Mamaroneck on Friday. That is a league game. And again, we're separated into 3 leagues, so there'll be some non-league, there'll be some league games. But Yonkers Forest at Mamaroneck. Another Friday game, John Jay East Fishkill at New Rochelle. That's a 6 o'clock game. That one's non-league. RCK at White Plains is on a Friday at 6 p.m. That is a league game. Port Chester at Ossining. Another league game at Friday. Scarsdale at Arlington. Interesting game at 6:30, non-league. Suffern at Fox Lane. Non-league game. Spring Valley at Carmel is a league game at 7 p.m. And then 2 Saturday games, Yonkers Brave at Mount Vernon, which is a 1:30 league game. And Saturday 1:30, Clarkstown South at North Rockland. That's a 1:30 game as well. And, we're going to go over a couple of games. Again, we'll dive into a few of the top matchups that we think, and then we'll go into some game picks. And the first matchup I want to talk about, Mars, is one of those Friday night games. And it's John Jay East Fishkill 1-0 at New Rochelle, who's also 1-0. This is a John Jay East Fishkill from League C against New Rochelle in League A. So it is a non-league matchup. And last week, John Jay East Fishkill beat Port Chester. New Rochelle beat Scarsdale. And when these two go at it, and they've gone at it quite a few years now, New Rochelle has kind of dominated this matchup. They're 10-1 versus John Jay East Fishkill since 2004. They have won 9 straight. And let's kind of go over a couple keys to victory, or keys for each team. And let's start with John Jay East Fishkill. To me, it starts at the quarterback spot with Jake Vanderoff. I thought he had a really solid game last week. Really helped spark the offense. Had a couple passing touchdowns to Mason Payton, who's another extremely important player, one of the few veterans they've had. And to me, he's got to be smart with the ball this week. New Rochelle forces turnovers. They have aggressive defensive backs who are spying the quarterback. He's got to be smart with the ball. He's got to be accurate and decisive on the short stuff. And they're going to have to do some calculated deep throws because Mason Payton is a fast guy, deep target guy. He had a couple big plays with him last week. He's going to have to do that again. But again, it's going to have to be he's going to have to lead the way for the offense. And, I'm just looking at the running game, and to me, I feel like the best way to beat New Rochelle is a north-south running game, right? If you could try to establish the run, it'll make your life a lot easier and also give you some play-action looks. So whether it's quick passes, whether it's any type of off-tackle runs, it's a one-cut-and-go because New Rochelle is going to be extremely fast. And on the defensive side for East Fishkill, Mars, they got to prevent the big play. I mean, it's a 4-quarter battle. New Rochelle just needs one spark, one opening, and they can hit a big play like you saw in Scarsdale when Scarsdale defense was playing well against New Rochelle. One kick return is what sparked them, and then you started to see the engine starting to roll. So it's got to be preventing the big play. I'm looking at these defensive linemen and linebackers to try to step up for John Jay East Fishkill. This is a young group that had like 8 sophomores starting, but a guy like Jordan Goodman on the defensive line and Martini, these are some of the guys that are going to have to make big plays for them if they're going to win this game. And going to the New Rochelle side, Marcin, I'll let you take it. I'm looking at the balanced attack on offense. And, They're not they don't have those big physical running backs. Again, they have a smaller back in Jaquiz Brandon, who's a shifty guy, and I think they're going to try to win with their speed against John Jay's Fishkill, who always shows they have some bulk. They're going to attack the edge, they're going to attack off tackle. This is a young defense of John Jay's Fishkill. So I'm looking at this offensive line and Gagliardo, Benitez to try to win the trenches and to seal those outside defenders for them to get into the open field. And I'm also looking at their quarterback, Luzzy. I thought he was a pretty steady force for them, right? It was his first game, young guy, was pretty solid. And going against a young secondary outside Mason Payton, I'm looking to look at these skill guys, Santiago Andrews, to really make some plays. Clark is another one who had a touchdown. Henderson. These guys could start to feast outside of Mason Payton if they can get some of that play action going, if they can give protection to Luzzy, and it could be a long day for that secondary if they get into the open field. Defensively, they got to stop the run. And I'm looking at linebacker Chris Tuck. If they can stop the run, if they could be physical with East Fishkill and get them into long down situations now, you're looking at that fast secondary. And again, Mason Payton is going to be a problem. So the secondary's got to focus in on him. But it will create opportunities if they get into second and third and long. The New defense forces John Jay that they can make some plays on the ball with the guys like Clark, who had 2 interceptions last week. Mars, what are you looking for in this matchup?
Yeah, when I take a look at John Jay's Fishkill, I agree. I think it all has to do with the quarterback position. And I really think that it's going to be dependent on the skill players to make the plays. But in my opinion, I feel like it's always going to be the offensive line and how efficient can they be. I mean, the point is when you play against a New Rochelle defense, they're going to come at you, right? And they've always done that. They've always been high on these stunts. They've always gotten to the quarterback and caused pressure. So the question is, for me, is can John Jay's Fishkill really hold the line, right? If the offensive line can be efficient and you allow the John Jay rush offense to really establish some sort of a momentum, and not even just running the ball, but also just like you said, the short yardage passes, something that keeps the chains moving, then you're really going to start wearing out New Rochelle. And from John Jay's defensive perspective, it's like the bend but don't break mentality. I think you have to always rally to the football. You have to have like 11 hats to the ball at all times, because obviously no one likes to get tackled down by one guy, let alone get tackled by like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 dudes. And I think that it's going to be important for John Jay to keep the contain, right? New Rochelle is always breaking the backs of teams by breaking contain, and then they just let their athletes run, right? I think that if they can hold the contain and rally the ball, I think that's going to give them a good advantage. For New Rochelle, it's really going to be, like you said, a balanced attack on the offensive side. I think it has to do a lot with dominating the line of scrimmage. If they can do that, then I really think it's going to be tough for any defense, let alone, I just think anyone can stop New Rochelle if they can run or really control line of scrimmage. And from the defensive side, I think it's the same thing. If they can control line of scrimmage, send the stunts, and get to the quarterback or get the back in the backfield, it's hard to really stop them, because they're going to make you make a mistake, especially when they're going to try to throw the ball, when you have all these athletes in the secondary that they've always capitalized on it's just a minor mistake. They always take it to the house, right? So I think, and you can always tell that by their pre-game warm-ups. They always have that that bingo drill going on, where they're always picking the ball off, and they're going to the house every single time. They're just getting ready for that one moment. So I think that New Rochelle's defense, if you can hold the line of scrimmage, then you're going to get a mistake or two thrown your way.
Let's go to another game, Friday game, another one. Scarsdale 0-1 at Arlington, who's 0-1. Non-league game, so both these teams are trying to get a victory after a loss last week. And Scarsdale lost to New Rochelle last week. Arlington lost to Carmel. And if you look at these two teams, Arlington's 3-1 versus Scarsdale since 2004. The last time they played was in 2019, where they won 28-6. And let's start with the away team at Scarsdale, Mars. Defensively, I thought they were pretty physical in their front seven last week. I thought they made it difficult in the first half for New Rochelle to move the ball. They had 4 fourth-down stops versus New Rochelle. So I like the way they played defense. And they're going to have to continue that against Arlington. And it starts with guys like Glantz, Lowy, Kahali. They're going to, the big thing about Arlington is you got to stop the physical running game and get them into long down passing situations. It's going to be key, because the last couple years, they just haven't been comfortable doing that, right? Throwing consistently, and they want to try to establish the run and make, get into that 2nd and 5, get into those 3rd and 3s. That's what Arlington wants to do. So if you could prevent them from doing that and put the ball into the inexperienced quarterback's hands, I think they'll have a good shot. On the offensive side of the ball, we know that the triple option's coming, Mars. So we know Glantz. I really like Glantz. He's the bell cow for that team, really. But you want to see some other guys, like their quarterback Nichols or their running back Baldwin, try to make some plays, and then they could do some play action. So, again, the big thing in triple option is winning the early downs so that you keep the defense guessing and you really test the discipline of that defense. But they got to avoid the turnovers. They had multiple interceptions that really turned the game against New Rochelle. And they can't do that again because, again, it'll put them in a bind against an Arlington that has a physical front. So they got to win that turnover battle. Going to Arlington, Mars, to me, it starts at the quarterback spot, right? They had the quarterback switching off last week. I think they continue to do that until someone separates themselves. So we took Muhammad, Resigno. I'm looking to see who gets better. I'm looking to see how this pass attack continues to grow. But the way to help inexperienced quarterbacks, Mars, establish the run game, right? They have offensive line, 2 big tackles, Coverly, Pascasello. They have their big center and Weathers. They have that inexperience at guard, but they have a size advantage. They got that stocky fullback, Nieves, at 200 pounds, and then a kind of a physical, a mix of running backs between Chaffee, I hope I said your name correct if you're watching, and Griffin, who's a real athlete, to line up a wide receiver running back. They got some guys to really establish a power run, a downhill running attack, and again, they're going up against a defensive front that's not as physical like Carmel was. So I do think that they can establish the run and help these quarterbacks out of play action and out of some quick and more manageable throws. Defensively, again, I think they had that same size advantage on the defensive side of the ball, but you have to be disciplined. Beating the triple option offense, Mars, what do we talk about? 2 things you got to do. You got to win early downs, and you got to create penetration. So that's going to be the big thing. The focusing on me is its defensive line and linebackers. And when they get the pitch, that secondary's got to come up. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
And when you look at these 2 teams, I feel like they both had, for more Scarsdale, had more of a competitive matchup. I think Arlington, I was high on them, especially on their offensive capabilities, but Carmel was just looked like another beast. And you know what? First week, it always has its rough edges. It's always never going to be simple and easy for anyone. So I think that Arlington, this is going to be a big game for them. And in Scarsdale, I would agree so as well because, it's always tough to start on a win, right? Every coach in their entire goals mindset is to win the first game because it's always good to set the stage early for the rest of the season. But the second game is going to be the most important, I think, for some of these teams. And when you take a look at Scarsdale, and I agree with you, I think that they played very tough against New Rochelle. And I think that they have the capability of really showing up in this game and causing some mayhem. And I think specifically it's going to be about controlling the line of scrimmage and stopping the run game. I think that if you can do that against Arlington, especially when they have the size advantage against you, then definitely you're really gonna have an advantage because you have more athletes, I think, that can defend the pass. And I think that by basically putting more onus on the quarterbacks, these dueling quarterbacks in Arlington, then it's gonna be more beneficial in your favor, in my opinion. From the offensive point of view, it's really about controlling the clock, right? Winning the early downs, getting favorable opportunities, especially on 3rd down where it's like 3rd and 3, and you can open up the playbook a little bit. And honestly, if it's close downs, just keep doing what you're doing. I think time of possession in this game, I think this game might be really fast, right? Because you have 2 teams that are really trying to establish the run heavily, and I think that Scarsdale, I think for them, it's really about can they hold the most time, and if they can, then that means they're doing their job effectively, right? From the other point of view, Arlington, it's really about, I think they have the size advantage. They have to use it, right? You have this big offensive line. You have these skill players that can really just be a load to take down. And I think for them, it's going to be about the play of the offensive line. Establish the run, really take the pressure off your quarterbacks, and just let your skill guys make the plays, right? And I think for defensively, you got to stay disciplined. I mean, you're playing against a triple option. We all know that one little mistake can cause a big headache, right? And I think that's going to be really important for this game.
Yeah, and let's go to another game on Friday, Mars. Suffern from League B, 1-0, at Fox Lane from League C, who's also 1-0. And I thought actually Fox Lane had one of the more impressive victories last week. Suffern won at North Rockland in a really thrilling game, and Fox Lane beat RCK at RCK on the road. And these 2 teams have split the series 2-2 since 2004. And the last time they played was in 2017, so it's been a couple years. And I'll start with the away team in Suffern, Mars. Offensively, they started the spread against North Rockland, having a little bit of difficulty moving the ball. And in the second half, they mixed more of that wildcat that you saw with Lubin. But this time, Samson Joseph was the guy, and this is an electric football player who kind of has his fingerprints all over the place, lines up at running back, lines up at quarterback, lines up at wide receiver. He's a really important player for them. And I thought their quarterback, Risco, although they were mixing it up in the second half, I thought he played a pretty solid game. He had 3 touchdowns last week, made some smart decisions, but overall, I think they have to do a better job in pass protection. And I know they have those 2 young tackles. North Rockland was putting some speedy guys out on the edge to get penetration, and it worked. And I'm interested to see if Fox Lane tries to bring some pressure off the edge against these young tackles. So they have to definitely do better. But they have weapons, and if they can get those weapons in space, they can cause some serious problems, either in the passing game or running the ball. And Samson Joseph is the first one that comes to mind. Jackson Bloom had a touchdown reception. Suffern has it. They just got to get, they have to smooth out the offensive line. But another thing, let's talk about special teams, Mars. They had 2 fumbles on punts that set up North Rockland touchdowns. You can't have that kind of mistake, right, in special teams that really sets it up for the other team. It almost cost them that game. And those are things that have to be corrected. You can't turn the ball over, and you can't turn the ball over in special teams. And then going to the defense, I thought the unit was hot and cold. In the first half, North Rockland was, running the ball on them, was hitting some pass plays. But in the second half, they stepped up. They forced 4 turnovers. They had an interception for a touchdown, which changed the game by Quincy Harris. Krebs had an interception to seal the game. And a guy, Dylan Yang, we've talked about a bunch, Frank's finest, he was really starting to, dominate that second half. He was causing a lot of disruption. And that's somebody who really kind of is a spark plug for that defense. But other guys, Desir, Joseph, Dorsally, Lutz, you saw a bunch of different guys make some plays for this team, and they're going to have to do that again. Going to Fox Lane, Mars, offensively, they run that 2-quarterback system, right? You have the quarterback, Eric Miller, who's the bigger guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, more of a pocket guy, but they'll run some quarterback power runs. He had a couple touchdowns, 2 touchdowns last week running the ball. And then they bring in another guy, Jack Travis, right, the senior. He's the faster guy. That's where you get the rollouts. That's where you get some of that play action. You get a passing touchdown. I'm looking at them, you're gonna get that 2-quarterback system. They're going to mix it up, try to keep the defense guessing. But I would imagine that Fox Lane wants to establish the run because that's what North Rockland had success against Suffern doing that. Now, they don't have the same size on the offensive line, but I'm looking at this offensive line to see, hey, can they get that type of movement against Suffern? Another guy to keep in mind is Noah Bernero. He's a guy who can line up in multiple spots, running the ball, being a receiver. And if they can establish the run, the play-action pass can really open up because Logan Matson is a stud. They can move him in the slot. They can put him out wide. They probably want to keep him away from Harris because he's a bit of a lockdown corner. But they can move him around, and he made some plays for them against RCK, and they're going to look to take advantage of that. Defensively, again, they have young tackles. I'm looking to see maybe they do send some pressure off the edge, create some penetration, but they got to be ready for that wildcat because Suffern's going to do that if they run into trouble. And I'm looking at defensive tackle Mark Barisha, 6'1", 240 pounds. I thought he was pretty good last week, and that's somebody to keep in mind. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, when you look at this game, I feel like Suffern, being the best team in AA last year, it's hard to really come back with all that, all the hype and say, well, what do you do now without Clever Lubin? But I really think they've taken that challenge and they've shown up. They
actually talked about it in an interview. They said, we're still good. We still have good players here.
Exactly, right. And I think that it's going to be really the biggest onus is going to be on the offensive line. I think that you lost a lot of guys that were really key to victory last year, and I think that last spring, and I feel like if they continue to really impress me with how they can be efficient, right? If they can continue that, then this offense can be really powerful because they do have a lot of athletes, right? I think that you just have a lot of guys that can really cause mayhem and really put on a show, but it really has to do with the offensive line if they can continue their path and follow the momentum from the spring. Defensively, I really think it's going to be about making your skill players play, right? Can they make the moves? Can they make the plays that will really change the game and just stay consistent, right? Stop the run, because that was the biggest issue they had against North Rockland. If they can stay tough on the line of scrimmage and really stop any sort of big plays, right? I think if they could do that, get their offense back on the field, then you really will see a lot of that wildcat look, and I think they'll make a lot of moves on that. Fox Lane, on the other hand, I feel like they need to establish the run. It's almost like, the biggest weakness of Suffern is, the run so far, and they have to get better. Fox Lane needs to, take advantage of that. They need to copy what North Rockland did, establish a run game, and really put them on their heels, right? Make them try to take a guess at what you're going to do next. And if they feel like if they could do it on the offensive side, it's going to really open up things for them. Defensively, Suffern's offense has a lot of weapons, right? So you have to be aware of what they can throw at you. And specifically, that Wildcat looked very dangerous. So I feel like you got to be ready for it. And I think it's going to be a tough game for sure. But these guys, both these teams are very interesting to see, just in general, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to another game, again, Friday game, Spring Valley from League B, 0-1 at Carmel from League B. So this is a league game. And league games are obviously extremely important because you got to get into the top 2 out of A and C and top 4 in League B. So league games are really important because that's your fast ticket to the playoffs. And Spring Valley, they lost to Clarkstown South. Carmel had a really impressive victory at Arlington. And these two teams have played each other 3 times. Carmel's 3-0 versus Spring Valley since 2004. The last time they played was in 2019 where they won 48-7. I believe that was a playoff game the last time they played each other. And let's start in Spring Valley, Mars. We know that they are young and they are inexperienced, but they are fast and they will spread you out and they will go up-tempo on the offense. And they're going to be a different style from what Carmel faced last week against Arlington, who was, to try to mix it up between condensing the formation and try to run right at you. Spring Valley is going to try to create space, right? And that's what they want to do. And to me, it all starts with their superb athlete, Mark Toussaint. This guy is a wide receiver, running back, defensive back, one of the best players in Section 1. And, he's going to have to make some game-breaking plays to keep Spring Valley in this and to try to win. And another guy, Jaden Griffin, who had that long touchdown last week against South, you want to see some of these skill guys take the next step. But I'm looking at quarterback Jaden Scott. I thought he was pretty solid. Again, young guy, trying to learn through mistakes, but a talented young man. And I want to see how he improves and gets better against a really solid Carmel defense. Defensively, they're going to be aggressive, Mars. They're going to blitz. The top priority's got to be stopping the run and Massey. And so, you're going up against a veteran offensive line and tight ends who can move people. You got to try to create some penetration, right? Because, again, you can't just run up the field when you blitz, because if you do, they'll run underneath you, and that's where those those big home run hitting plays can happen. So they got to create pressure, but they also have to be disciplined. And, on the other, just talking about in the passing game, they got to keep quarterback Dahl in the pocket. He is extremely dangerous on rollouts. So when they do into play action, you got to make sure those edge guys, take a good angle and to keep them inside the tackle box if they can. Carmel, offensively play your game, Mars. They have a veteran offensive line. They pretty much dominated up front, even against a big Arlington. And to me, that's what you want to do, right? You want to just dominate up front. Against this aggressive style, make sure you communicate amongst the offensive linemen and your fullbacks and your tight ends. Know who you're responsible for, because if you can get through that initial surge that Spring Valley likes to cause, that's when you can get those big chunk plays. And to me, I think this is a game that Massey could have a big one. And then they go into the passing game, the play action. And they have some wide receivers who Spring Valley likes to go man coverage because they like to send stunts. So those DBs like to be very aggressive. This is where double moves can work, right? This is where trips and bunch can work to try to create some rub routes, try to create some picks. And so I'm looking at Kay, I'm looking at Fiore, DeLeo. These are guys who can beat man-to-man coverage, and they have an opportunity here if they can get some pass protection to do that. Defensively, to me, it's getting pressure on the young quarterback. You look at the defensive line, again, another veteran group, Fusco, Telesco, they're a force, and force the young quarterback into mistakes. And the big thing is you got to tackle these guys in open field because they are athletes and they are fast. And to me, if you can force them to drive down the field consistently, I think Carmel's a good chance to win, Mars. What do you want to talk about?
I mean, this game is going to be very interesting. I feel like when you look at Spring Valley, and you mentioned the fact that they have a lot of athletes, and they're just not as experienced as Carmel is. I think that their biggest strength is going to be that they just have so many speed to them, right? I think that the fact that they're going to open you up to try to beat you in the open field is really impressive, and they have a lot of skill, and we've seen them in a lot of different things, especially like in the 7-on-7 tournaments where they've been very fast, and you feel like they can be very dangerous if they get into that open field and it's one-on-one. You don't know what's going to happen next, but I really think it's going to be for Spring Valley's sake. They want to get in those opportunities to get you in the open field and try to burn you there. And defensively, as you said, they're very aggressive, and I think that just like both of us, we like that style of defense where they're going to be in your face, they're ready to attack. But the most important thing is that you're disciplined and you're smart when you go attack. You don't want to just fly up the field. You want to be effective. You want to make the play when you go in. For Carmel's sake, it's really about can you control line of scrimmage, right? I think the most difficult thing is going to be adjusting to the blitzes. I mean, for any offensive line that sees a lot of heat coming, their mind starts to race. Like, what's my rule? What do I do next? And the most effective and most impressive offensive lines are able to adjust to that. And I think if Carmel can do that, you're going to open up a lot of lanes for your skill players to really just make big plays. And I think that if they can do that, then this offense can be explosive. And for defensively, it's about, you're playing against a very young unit, right? And if you can put the pressure on them to make big plays, then they may not cash the check, right? And I think that that's going to be the key to success on the defensive side. Put pressure and just be smart.
Yeah. And let's go to the game of the week, Mars. And this is the Saturday matchup. Clarkstown South 1-0 League B at North Rockland League B, who is 0-1. Big league game, big Rockland County game. And last week, Clarkstown South won at Spring Valley. North Rockland lost that thriller at home versus Suffern. And when you look at this series, Mars, North Rockland historically has owned this series, 10-3 versus South since 2004. But Clarkstown South has won 3 straight. The last time they played each other was in 2017. It's been a couple years because South went down to A. But now these two teams are playing each other again. And let's start with Clarkstown South, Mars. Offensively, they'll give you the spread. They'll give you a 2-back look with an H-back in La Rosa. And they had a lot of success last week running off tackle with their running backs, running jet sweep with their slot backs. And I'm looking at guys like Dorsless, Capola. Again, those wide receivers and slot backs running jet, the play action stuff, right? This offense was really successful running the ball multiple different ways. And I think North Rockland's going to be tough up the gut to run in between the tackle consistently, but off tackle and out on the edge, they might find that success. But I'm looking at these quarterbacks, Mars. Kerr and Holder. They didn't throw the ball much. I mean, they threw the ball, 4 or 5 times. And so I'm interested to see, are they going to be forced to throw a little bit more? They had a lot of success running. They didn't need to. But we're going to see if they're going to have to throw more and try to hit some big plays. The guy like Hale has a wide receiver. But I'm looking at this offensive line. Jack Ryan, May, Somerlid versus this North Rockland front. And Fulgencio and Vargas. And there was this number 33 that played defensive end. I don't have a roster, but he was creating some havoc. That's going to be the big matchup to me. Those guys battling it out, and who's going to win up front is going to be big. On the defensive side of the ball, again, South is going to be playing against the spread. They played against a similar action to what Spring Valley did, up-tempo, fast. North Rockland didn't huddle against Suffern practically at all, if they did. They didn't. They were moving quick. And so South is going to face a similar structure that they saw last week. To me, though, I thought North Rockland did a really good job mixing it up, right? And they ran the ball well with their running back. They ran well with the quarterback. They did some nice play action. You're going to see a nice balanced attack. And so this defense has to be ready. And to me, again, I'm looking at this defensive line and linebackers led by La Rosa to try to stop. They got to contain that front seven and force all these plays out to the edge because if North Rockland can run downhill, it'll create a lot of problems for them. And so that's what I'm looking at. I think North Rockland has some good size, so it's going to be an interesting fight. And these linebackers and edge guys are going to have to play big for Clarkstown South. Going to North Rockland, Mars, offensively, again, I talked about it. I thought they moved the ball pretty well last week with some balance. Their running back, Frazier, was a stud, and he was, running the ball hard. He was breaking tackles. He was doing some screen plays. I thought the screen game was pretty nice. They have a good size up front. And quarterback Chase Patterson, he made plays. He had 2 touchdowns last week. But what killed them? Penalties, turnovers. You can't have that and win games. I mean, that's what really was an Achilles heel for their offense at pivotal points. Sometimes it was bobbled snaps. So, those are going to be, if they could play a clean game, I think they have a really good chance of moving the ball because they have a nice balanced attack to them. Defensively, I think they have a size advantage up front. And, they're going to go up against those shifty runners that I mentioned previously. And you got to tackle well. I thought there were times that they missed tackles. Again, put the ball in the young quarterback's hands of Clarkstown South and force them to throw the ball 15 to 20 times. Because if they do that, Mars, I think North Rockland has a pretty good chance of winning this game. Mars, before I go to the matchups and the player to watch, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these two opponents, I feel like it's a very interesting matchup for sure. I think when you look at Clarkstown South, they're very you try to spread you out, and I feel like they're trying to put their athletes in an open field to try to make plays, but they are really effective at hitting the outside runs, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the quarterbacks. I think that you kind of mentioned the fact that that's going to be like the wild card. You see whether or not the quarterbacks are actually going to do more than just are they going to throw, right? And I think that's going to be I think the biggest thing I'm going to look out for. I feel like if they can throw, then it really just opens up what they can do on the offensive side. Because obviously it's going to be about the offensive line and how well they do against North Rockland's D-line. I mean, when we look at the other way around, I feel like North Rockland, from their perspective, they want to run to the inside and really just pound the rock, right? So it's really going to be a battle of the offensive line.
North Rockland's coming out in a complete spread. That old North Rockland is gone. Right, they're in complete spread. They run similar action, so everything looks the same. But one time they'll hand it off. One time the quarterback will keep. One time they'll throw it. Right, so a lot of the action is similar, but those runs are downhill when he hands it off. Yeah. But it's not the eye anymore, right?
No.
It's complete
but
spread.
It's still that downhill, in your face kind of like in mentality.
Physically up front.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something that when you look at this game, what I'm looking for is going to be the North Rockland's D-line against South's offensive line.
Yes.
I think that front, whoever controls the line of scrimmage, is really what's going to set the team apart, right? If North Rockland can gain that control and put their guys back on offense, then they're just going to try to wear you out, right, with those downhill type of runs. And the same thing the other way around. I feel like if it's South can control that offensive line and we can control the line of scrimmage with their offensive line, they're going to start hitting the outside plays and really try to make North Rockland try to run with them. And I think that's going to be their advantage in this matchup.
Yeah, and to me, the matchup, and we talked about a Mars 1 matchup you dropped and I said, was that Clarkstown South offensive line versus North Rockland's defensive line. But another one I'm looking at, Mars, North Rockland has some skill guys, those wide receivers, and Becker and Farrar, who can make plays. And I'm looking at them versus the Clarkstown South secondary. And Fatera, Crisp, Davis. And again, I think that this is going to be really an intriguing matchup. I'm really excited about this one. There's a reason this is the game of the week. And the player to watch for me, I'm looking at running back Isaiah Frazier from North Rockland. This guy can contribute, like you said, downhill runner. He can run to the outside, make guys miss in space. He also can catch the ball out of the backfield and the slot. This is the guy who's going to be the number 1 target for North Rockland, and I think the biggest guy that South needs to stop. All right, Marcel, you ready for the game picks?
I'm ready to roll.
All right, we're going to go into the game picks. I'm going to pick all the games, not just the ones that we spoke about. And again, the big goal is to get over 75% at the end of the year. Our picks right. Week 1, Mars, I got 24. I was 24-5. That's 83%. In AA, I was 8-1. And for yourself, you were 22-6, which is 79%. So we both hit over that 75% mark. You were 7-2 in AA games, and Lohud was 22-7. Just saying.
22-7.
Just throwing it out there.
What's that percentage?
I think we both beat him.
No, well, I know that.
I don't know it off the top of my head. But I digress. Let's go into the game picks. First one, Mars, Yonkers Forest from League B, 0-1 at Mamaroneck, League B. This is a league game. Yonkers Forest last week gave up 44 points and 339 yards rushing. To me, that spells some doom. I'm going with Mamaroneck. Guys with Hamilton, Sandram, Cox. These guys can run the football and run it very well. And Yonkers force, although I like the way Martinez played, he had 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think Mamaroneck's rush attack is going to be too much. I'm going with Mamaroneck.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mamaroneck as well. I feel like they have like the skill players that really set them apart, and I think that Yonkers force is still having some difficulty stopping scoring in general. I think that Mamaroneck is definitely going to have that advantage with their guys up front, and I just think that they're going to just run away with the game.
Yep. Next game, we talked about this one. John Jay East Fishkill 1-0 at New Rochelle, who's 1-0. This is a non-league game. I look at things, and both are young and inexperienced team, but I think East Fishkill is actually younger than New Rochelle. They started about 8 sophomores, Mars. New Rochelle is 12-2 the last 3 seasons at home. But John Jay East Fishkill's last W versus New Rochelle was in 2011, I want to say. I could be wrong on that date, but it was at New Rochelle. I just think New Rochelle has too many athletes and too much speed, and they're a little bit more experienced, which is crazy because neither of them are than John Jay East Fishkill. I'm going with New Rochelle.
Yeah, I'm going to go with New Rochelle too. I feel like when you look at this game, it's really going to depend on the line of scrimmage and who controls it more. And I think New Rochelle is going to send the heat and try to really force John Jay's inexperience to kind of come out in spades. And I think New Rochelle is just going to capitalize on it. As I mentioned in the preview, I think whenever they capitalize on any mistake, they're going to run away with it.
Next game, RCK, who's 0-1 at White Plains, who is 1-0. Another league game, both from League C. And, RCK, I love Capo. It appears to me they're still trying to figure out their identity. They had too many turnovers that killed them last week. So I'm looking to see RCK improve this time around. But White Plains ran for 223 yards last week, Mars. And our guy, Eli Pierre, rushed for 136. I think the quarterbacks last week had some success against RCK. And with this rush attack and with the quarterback Biondi, I think he can hit some play-action plays. I'm going to go with White Plains. I think White Plains starts the season 2-0.
I'm going to agree. White Plains is kind of being, it's funny because you had that bold take saying that White Plains' offense is going to be a top 2, and I didn't agree with it. I sold on that one, but it's kind of like they listened to me and they said, you know what, we're going to prove that we're going to be one of the top 2 offenses, and I think that they're going to kind of continue that trend into this week. I think Eli Pierre, and I was raving about him in the preview. He's a guy we've been watching for a while, and he's only just proving the Frank's Finest list right by just performing as well as he is. And I think White Plains is going to ride on his coattails as well as the other athletes they have. And they're going to just they have a lot of weapons, and I think they're just going to continue this path going forward. I'm going White Plains.
Next game, Port Chester from League C, who's 0-1 at Ossining, who's 0-2 from League C. Another league game, both these teams trying to get their first victory. Mars, I'm looking at Port Chester, and I want to see this team fight it out. I'm looking at the offensive line, and Vecchio and Leyva, and trying to get those skill guys, quarterback Hins, running back Taylor, some space. Again, the triple option offense, you got to be disciplined. You got to make fast decisions. You can't turn the ball over. And at Ossining, you got to feed the beast in Francis. But quarterback Gallery has done a pretty good job at play action and getting out on the edge. But again, the defense, to me, is going to be the big question. Can they be disciplined? And I think they will. I think they'll make enough plays. I think they will feed the beast. They will control the time of possession. I'm going Ossining.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ossining. I feel like I like the way that they played, and I do think they have the ability to really, if they stay disciplined, really control the triple option. And as long as you can do that, then I think they're going to have a lot of opportunities on offense, and they're just going to capitalize on those. I'm going to go with Ossining.
Another game, Yonkers Brave from League A, who's 0-1 at Mount Vernon, who is 1-0. Another league game. Interesting game to me, Mars. Yonkers Brave, this is another team I'm looking to see their fight. They had a rough game last week. How do you bounce back? The way, can you find that success being aggressive, using that option against an aggressive Mount Vernon defense to try to catch them off and try to hit some big plays? But you can't turn the ball over. Turnovers have been killing Yonkers Brave along with penalties. And I look at Mount Vernon, Mars. They put up 44 points last week, rushed for 339 yards. And I think Mount Vernon is going to have the advantage up front. I'm going to take Mount Vernon. And a guy to keep in mind, their quarterback, Johnson, who won the Lowhud Player of the Week, hit some big-time plays last week. I think he does it again. And I think Mount Vernon starts the season 2-0.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you. Mount Vernon is definitely shown that they have a lot of weapons on their side, and I think that they had that in spades last week, and I think, I think this is going to continue that run going forward. I think Yonkers Brave definitely has the capability of doing well in this game. I just think that they have to kind of keep everything tight-knit. I think there's just too many penalties on this side. So I'm going to agree with you. Go Mount Vernon here.
Next game, our Scarsdale 0-1 at Arlington, who is 0-1. This is a non-league game, right? So although you want to get that first one, it's it's a little different than if it's a league game. This one was tough for me. Again, I look at Scarsdale and I see a physical defense that competed, that really made life difficult for New Rochelle. Can they bring that physicality here? I think they can. And offensively, you want to see how does that triple option continue to develop with that bell cow glance. I'm looking at Arlington's offensive line, Mars. I mean, this has got to be a big moment for this offensive line. I mean, they got to create some favorable matchups on the offense. They got to, get into second and short, third and short. Scarsdale is 5-10 on the road the last 4 seasons, and Arlington is 12-6 at home the last 4 seasons. I'm going to go with Arlington. I think it's a little difficult trip from Scarsdale up to Arlington. Arlington's a little bit better at home. Scarsdale's been a little rough on the road. I'm going Arlington.
I'm going to go with Scarsdale, actually. And I think that Scarsdale has, the triple option. As long as they can kind of contain this big offensive line from Arlington, I think they're going to start to try to wear them out and really try to just get in those favorable situations. And I think Scarsdale had a very good showing against New Rochelle in the previous week. And, New Rochelle, as much as everyone's saying that it's not the same New Rochelle team, they have a lot of athletes on that squad, and they have a lot of speed and a lot of strength. So if they're keeping it close, they're fighting against New Rochelle in a battle, I'm still going to believe in Scars, and I think they're going to pull it out on this one in a very close game, very quick game, but close game. I'm going to pick Scarsdale here.
Suffern 1-0 from League B at Fox Lane, who's 1-0 from League C. This is a non-league matchup. Again, I look at Suffern, a mix of pass, a mix of the Wildcat. They move the ball pretty well, but they got to cut down on those penalties and those turnovers on special teams. Those will kill you. But I'm looking at Dylan Yang, and I think this is a guy who could make some big-time plays in this game. And Fox Lane is an intriguing team, Mars. I saw some nice energy in them last game. Had an impressive victory with that 2-quarterback system and a couple skill guys. This is an interesting matchup, but I'm going Suffern. I think Suffern is, they have a little bit more weapons on the defensive side of the ball. And although Fox Lane played well last week, I just think Suffern has a little bit too much. And when they have a couple of those guys that you can get them in space, they'll make some big plays. I'm going Suffern.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Suffern, too. I feel like they have a lot of those athletes. And even though the offensive line, a lot of the guys have been graduated and everything, I still think they do have a lot of good players on the offensive line still. And I think that the fact they have this Wildcat that's just roaming and running over people and just really just having their way, I think that Suffern has a lot of that talent that will just be too much for Fox Lane. So I'm going to stick with Suffern.
Spring Valley 0-1 in Class B at Carmel, who's 1-0 also in Class B. Spring Valley's got nothing to lose, right, Mars? You're young, you're inexperienced, but hey, let's see how you rebound from a loss. Let's see the growth from last week to this week, and let's see you try to get out in space and make plays. And obviously, a guy like Toussaint has to make some big-time plays in this one. I want to see if Spring Valley can play a clean game. That's going to be the big thing this week. But I'm going to go with Carmel. They just have too many weapons. They got, Spring Valley's got that young defensive line going up against this veteran offensive line, and the same thing reversed. The Spring Valley O-line versus that veteran D-line. I just think Carmel's got too many guys up front that can create some holes, and they have the weapons to hit the home run on Carmel's side. I'm going to go with Carmel. Yeah,
I'm going to go with Carmel, too. I feel like that's just the tail of the tape. When you have a young squad against a veteran squad, I just feel like the chemistry on Carmel is just rocking and rolling. I think a lot of people were expecting the Arlington game to be a lot closer, and it just wasn't, right? And I think Carmel just was clicking on all cylinders, and I feel like this is kind of like their moment, right? I think that Spring Valley is a young team. They have a lot of talent, but I just feel like they just don't have enough against Carmel right now. And I think that, by the end of the season, Spring Valley will be more of a force because they have more experience. But Carmel is a force right now, and I think that's the difference. I'm going to go with Carmel here.
Let's go to the game of the week. Clarkstown South 1-0 from League B at North Rockland, who's 0-1 in League B, big league game. These teams have played each other multiple times in the past. Who do you got, Mars?
Well, this game is very interesting. I feel like Clarkstown South, and last time I checked, they have been doing well in this battle between them and North. And I feel like North Rockland. Yeah,
they won the last 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, North Rockland, and I feel like this has been a interesting matchup in my opinion. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking at is going to be about who can control the line of scrimmage, whether it's the defensive line from North Rockland or really the offensive line of Clarkstown South, and they each have their own method of scoring and how they're going to move the ball on the offensive end. North Rockland's going to try to just run downhill, but they'll have different looks out of how they do so, and Clarkstown South are going to try to get to the outside. I think that's going to be very interesting to see who wins that. But I think North Rockland is going to win that. I think that North Rockland's defensive line is definitely going to help really try to keep everything in their ball house. Right? They're going to try to make everything on their terms. The D line is definitely going to be a presence, and it's going to cause some havoc for sure. And I think that with that happening, you're going to get some mistakes on the Clarkstown South side, and I think North Rockland is just going to capitalize it. And I think that when it's at home, right? The Red Raider. The chant's going to be rocking and rolling. I guarantee you. I think North Rockland's going to walk away with this one.
This is a really intriguing game and a lot of intriguing matchups. And Clarkstown South, I know we have a bunch of Clarkstown South fans who watch the show. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I think they have a nice mix of veteran and young players. My question is going to be, if they can't run the ball, how consistently can they throw it? And they obviously didn't need to last week. I feel like they're going to need to this week. And I've been going back and forth on this game a lot. But I'm going to agree with you. I think North Rockland is going to win this game. They had a real tough, heartbreaking loss last week. But I sensed the calmness after the game when you listen to the interview to the coach. And it's because they know if they can cut down on those turnovers, if they can cut down on those penalties, they have a pretty good squad, and they move the ball pretty well. And I feel that they, with that veteran group up front, can move the ball against this team as well. This is going to be a close game, another close game in North Rockland. But I think North Rockland makes a couple plays that are going to separate it, and a guy like Frazier who's going to make the difference in this one. All right, everyone, that was our show. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy this weekend's of games, and we'll see you all very soon.